You are listening to Fantha Tracks.
Because of the following special program, Wonder Woman and the Incredible Hulk will not be presented this evening.
It's time to get all your Star Wars news in a single file. This is Making Tracks. Here are your hosts, Mark Newbold and Mark Mulcaster.
It's not true. That's impossible.
Hello and welcome to episode 169 of Making Tracks, brought to you by those fine folk over at fanthatracks.com. My name's Mark, I am one of your co-hosts, and joining me this week, well, he's taller than me, he's hairier than me, it's not Chewbacca, it's of course Mr. Mark Newbold. Mark, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing very, very well. How about you?
I'm alright, yes, I'm not too bad, thank you. I've just had a pretty decent week. Managed to kind of actually sit down and watch the latest episode of The Gallery. And yeah, just generally things are ticking along nicely, kind of on the build-up now to London Film Comic Con next weekend.
Loads going on the site. Just to let people know, Fantha Tracks has not turned into an Indiana Jones website. We promise we are still a Star Wars website. There just happens to be the first Lucasfilm movie in 4 years, and probably the only one for the next 4 years, the way life seems to turn. So we're making the most of it. But yes, Fantha Tracks is still a Star Wars website, but we do have a focus on Lucasfilm, just in case people were wondering. Has any cool stuff come into your collection?
Yes, actually, I have managed to get my 1997 limited edition commemorative Hong Kong Hasbro Kenner playset. I managed to get one, like I said I would, and it's pretty cool. So I got the one with Luke, Leia, and C-3PO. And when I say Leia, she's not exactly Monkey Leia, but she's not too far off it. But, similar kind of thing. It says on the back, because I think it's quite interesting. I mean, the fact that they've even done this is like a distant and brilliant star. Hong Kong bursts into a new era with the 1997 handover to China. Unknown territory and an unknown, uncharted future bring in new adventures and a galaxy of opportunities for its inhabitants. Adventures that will travel as far as imagination can take them, protected and watched over by the ever-present Guardians. So it's a bit of a weird kind of thing to put on the back of a Star Wars box, really. But there you go. So there's two editions. There's a commemorative edition 1, which is the Heroes, and then the second edition, which is Boba Fett, Darth Vader, and a Stormtrooper, which will hopefully be with me for next week's episode. But there you go. It's I've got it. So it's a kind of like an interesting kind of thing, like historical piece, I guess you'd say. Yeah. How about you? I'm sure you've probably been on a bit of an indie trip recently, haven't you?
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, little odds and sods of indie bits that I was missing here. A book here, a comic there. Nothing crazy. The premiere, as I say, was very cool because there were tickets, physical printed tickets, which are hard to get these days, sadly, when everyone just waves their mobile phone in people's faces. So that was very cool. In terms of Star Wars, no, nothing much. Just my latest batch of comics from Matt Booker at Automatic Comics. So working through the reviews there, almost caught up with reviews as well, which I'm rather chuffed about. So not a huge amount, just little bits and bobs, but nothing that leaps out as being like a marquee purchase lately. So I'm sure there will be more, because LFCC, we did a live Making Tracks last year. Obviously, you remember because you were there as we walked around Olympia looking at all the cool stuff that we saw there. So I'm sure we will do that again, and there'll be loads of really interesting things to see. Shall we dive into the news, Mark? London Film and Comic Con. We have a presence at the show. Yourself and myself will be there. We've got plenty to be getting on with, and we have posted on the site a list of what we're doing at the show. I've got a couple of panels that I'm hosting as well. Friday the 7th of July at Olympia, 12:30 to 1 o'clock on the main stage. I'm chatting with Fred Sorensen. Fred was Jot Lindsay, who was the pilot at the start of Raiders of the Lost Ark. Fascinating guy who's done stuff outside of movies as well. So there's some interesting things to talk about there. And then 2:45 on the main stage again, myself and Mike Edmonds and Katie Purvis. So we'll be talking with those guys about their time in the Star Wars galaxy and outside, because they've both done other stuff. 4:15 to 4:45 on the second stage. You and me, Mark, we're talking to Eric Walker, original Mace Tawani from Caravan of Courage, and briefly from Battle for Endor. I've interviewed Eric before on a number of occasions for my old site Lightsaber and for Fantha Tracks and for Jedi News and also for The Insider, but I've never met him, so I'm really looking forward to meeting him. What's your first question going to be when we sit down with Eric on stage?
I guess it would be something along the lines of, how cool was it to be in Star Wars when you were 13?
That's as good a question as any. On the Saturday, 8th of July, 1 until 1:30 on the second stage, Making Tracks again, you and me, talking to Robert Ems. So he was the ISB officer, Lonnie Jung, I think you would say his name. So looking forward to speaking to him, because obviously he won't be able to say much about Andor Season 2, but hopefully we'll be able to drill him about Andor Season 1. So looking forward to that. And then an hour later, we're back on the second stage, you and me again, another Making Tracks with Michael Carter, Bib for Tuna. And then on the Sunday the 9th, on the second stage, once again, we close out the whole show, 4:45 until 5:15, with Quentin Pierre, who played numerous roles in Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. So we've got quite a bit to be getting on with, I think, at LFCC. What other things will you be doing there, Mark?
I don't know. I guess hanging around and talking to people, as seems to be the case. So the Rebel Legion's going to be there, the Mando Mercs are going to be there, Saber Guild are going to be there, some of the Dark Empire coming down as well, and the 501st UK Garrison. So it's going to be a nice display of Star Wars costumes across the weekend. Saber Guild there doing some classes. I think it's fairly early on the Saturday and Sunday. I'm not sure about the Friday yet. So they'll be running some kind of lightsaber classes. So if you've got children or small adults, I'm sure they'll be happily instructing the ways of how to swing a lightsaber. And yeah, we'll be collecting, all being well, but the buckets turn up. We'll be collecting for Make-A-Wish again. So we're carrying on the partnership that we started with Star Wars Celebration Europe, because we've raised, over £9,000. So hopefully we can raise a little bit more for Make-A-Wish, because it's a fantastic charity.
Fantastic numbers at Celebration, and Make-A-Wish is a wonderful charity. So Fantha Tracks will have our wonderful booth there that we debuted at Celebration. We have plans to do things at the table, some cool things, chuck a pound in the charity pot just to have a little go at some games. We've got badges and patches to hand out as well, as we always do, and we're always there to talk and get around the show and cover it as much as we can, throw it up on social media over the weekend. So stay tuned to Fantha Tracks. We're there. There's a bunch of other great sites and people there, Generation Skywalker, Star Wars Sessions, Jedi News, and others. So stay tuned. There's more news coming throughout the week. And of course, you'll hear all the results of what happened at London Film and Comic Con here on Making Tracks and on Fantha Tracks Radio.
Hi, I'm Nelson Hall, and I get my Star Wars news from Fantha Tracks.
So he's the man of the moment, the director of Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, but he is also going to be working on a Dawn of the Jedi project. But what a lot of people don't realise is that James Mangold had a Boba Fett project that was being worked on much, much, much earlier that didn't happen. He describes that project as a borderline R-rated single-planet spaghetti western. Clearly, this was before The Mandalorian was developed. He talks about how he doesn't think that Grogu would have fit into this world, but without preempting it too much, the thought of a single-rider spaghetti western hard-edged Boba Fett movie, that totally floats my boat. Do you think that would have been an interesting thing to watch? And also, clearly, it would have completely changed the current course of Star Wars history, wouldn't it?
Oh, God, yeah. Yeah, I mean, that would be really interesting to watch. A borderline R-rated movie. I mean, that just says to me like gratuitous violence, really, which would be pretty cool. And I think as what we've seen from like Andor is that actually you can kind of push the limits of the Star Wars storytelling into more of an adult arena without it feeling disconnected from Star Wars. So be interesting. Obviously, it does raise some questions, doesn't it? Like, you know, if you've got something that's part of the canon and only a certain demographic of a fandom can see it, then how does that get, you know, those stories get connected to the wider canon for the younger audience? So haven't seen some of James's set pieces that they've done on the Dial of Destiny. I think he could have done some really cool and very visceral action setups, so that could be really cool with Boba Fett, I think.
Totally. I mean, he says in the interview with Happy Sack Confused podcast, he says, at the point I was doing it, I was probably scaring the out of everyone. I was making much more of a borderline R-rated single-planet spaghetti western. They probably would never be able to embrace Baby Yoda if I'd made that. It didn't really belong in the world I was kind of envisioning. So he's definitely talking about a much tougher, hard-edged, almost pulpy feel, you know, and being a spaghetti western. He mentions Morricone, Ennio Morricone, when he was working on his ideas and such. And also that once Solo, A Star Wars Story, came out and didn't do the numbers they wanted, there was that sort of corporate realignment that shifted from doing Star Wars Story big screen movies to doing streaming stuff. So it's an interesting thing to balance the thought of him doing this and it not happening and where things could have gone to where he will eventually pick up Star Wars 20,000 years before the timeline that we know and showing us the origins of the Force. Indy is certainly more, and there's some hard-edged stuff in Indy. There's some cold kills in Indy, so it's not all family-friendly. That being said, it is much more of a family film than how he describes doing a single-rider Boba Fett movie. I just wonder whether that in any way could or would play into what we might see in the future or the past with the Dawn of the Jedi project.
You've got to kind of modernise certain things and kind of bring these franchises up to date and for a modern audience. But I think what they did really well with Indiana Jones was kind of keep it still in keeping with the rest of the series, and it didn't feel out of place. It didn't necessarily feel like a 2023 film. Whilst the visual effects and all that were kind of like up there, if you were to compare it to, say, Fast and Furious 10, you would think that film was kind of set, maybe shot 10, 15 years ago. If you're kind of going back so far into the distant past, basically there should be nothing, as far as I'm concerned, that should really echo into like A New Hope or the films that we've got. There's nothing that I think that needs to be called back into this film. So I think you can almost completely start with a clean slate. How developed is a civilization? The Dawn of the Jedi comics were quite savage in places, and it was kind of like a mix of arcane technology and a more raw way of existing. It'll be interesting to see how that goes about. And I mean, there's always a danger, isn't it, I think, to kind of go back to day one. When you read something like the Silmarillion or, the origin story of any character, sometimes it kind of pulls the mystique away, and sometimes it doesn't necessarily live up to the expectations based on the little tidbits that you've picked up from other stories along the way. I'm really curious at how the discussion around the Force and the discovery of the Force is discussed. Is it even actually something that, literally somebody couldn't be asked to reach for the TV remote and then suddenly they're thinking about, I want the TV remote, and it flies into their hand? That kind of thing that we've all tried to do. Is it something like that? Or is it actually even way, 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 way back? There's a planet that actually they've been living and using the Force. And so actually when we step into the storyline, it's not like we're seeing the discovery of the Force, we're just seeing the very first uses of the Force.
It's interesting you mentioned that, because Kathleen Kennedy was also speaking about the Rey Skywalker film and the Dawn of the Jedi film potentially connecting, and was discussing this and said, I think what's great about Star Wars is it's a big galaxy, and we're coming off what was a major war with the First Order, and now Rey has made a promise to Luke, and that's really the core of where we're going and what this story will be. That's the Rey story. I think it offers tremendous opportunity to introduce new characters and start with something fresh, because we culminated with what George was creating, and now we take all of that and move to the next chapter. And then she also mentions that when she came into Lucasfilm, one of the first ideas that was on the table was the thought of an origin or a genesis of the Force storyline. So this isn't something new. And she says that's come up a lot. From the moment I stepped in and George brought me into the company, there's been a lot of interest in that. It was something that James Mangold, immediately sparked to. And I think it's a really nice compliment to what we're doing with moving into the future with Rey, and then understanding a bit more of where this all came from, because it will be at the heart of creating the new Jedi Order. So to get a real sense of where that might have begun with the Dawn of the Jedi would be pretty cool. So she's bringing the two things together in the sense that we will understand as an audience how the Force originated, because at Rey's point of time, way out in the future, you've kind of had a dark ages for the Force, if you like.
Yeah.
And even though it's reawakened, it's kind of mostly reawakened in Rey. So she now has to pick up those Jedi tomes that we talked about and figure it all out in a way that probably Luke never had the opportunity to do. So understanding the Force for us as an audience, I think, and I always worry when they do get too involved in the origins of the Force, because it takes me back to Phantom Menace when they first mentioned midichlorians publicly. Midichlorians were created for Empire Strikes Back but never seen. But, when they talk about midichlorians in Phantom Menace and people railed against it, they hated it. People were so against the concept of the midichlorians. It's really early doors for Lucas in describing how the Force came about. My long-winded point is I wonder how many notes George made about the origins of the Force, because we've kind of known as fans that the Force and hyperdrive and lightsabers, they've been around for tens of thousands of years, and it seems that Lucasfilm and Mangold now are going to go back to that point. And will it be like you said, will somebody just be sitting on the right planet at the right moment and just reach for a cup and all of a sudden whoop, it's in his hand, like Broom Boy at the end of Last Jedi? Or will it be something more profound? Will it be a quest, an Indiana Jones style quest, an archaeological quest to find a mythical power? I'm really interested to see how it will play out.
Hi, this is Vivian Lyra Blair, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks.
So back in May, you and me and a bunch of Fantha Trackers went all the way up to Blackburn to Ewood Park for Star Wars Fan Fun Day. We had a fantastic time, as we always do. We spoke to loads of interesting people, and we've brought a number of those people to conversations here on Making Tracks. And the last one is with Harley Durst. Harley played Moloch in Star Wars: A Solo Story, but he's got way more to talk about than just that. So this is myself chatting to Harley Durst at Star Wars Fan Fun Day back in May.
Well, we're here at Star Wars Fan Fun Day. I'm here with Harley. How has your day been? How's the show been so far?
It's been wonderful. It's very well received, and this is my first signing in quite a few years.
Yeah.
So I've just forgot how passionate everybody is. And last night we had lovely dinner and the raffle and everything like that.
Yeah.
And I had a ball. So yeah, I've heard that it's a very good event to go to and do signings at. So it's been very good to me.
It's a show that's reputation sort of precedes it in the best way.
Yeah.
Has it been what you expected? Like I say,
it's been fantastic. Yeah, like really personable and amazing cosplay, and everyone's been lovely and plenty of signatures, so it's been good.
And why have you been away from it for a little while, work-wise? I mean, obviously we've had a pandemic. That doesn't help.
No, just work, to be honest. And I was talking to some people recently and actually made the admission that I did turn down a few interesting creature roles on current Star Wars series.
Right.
Because of my stunt work and what I was doing. Okay. And I feel crazy for doing that in hindsight, like touching base with people again. But it's nice to be back in the scene.
But there's so much going on. Obviously, work's been going good if you can do that. So that's a positive. Yeah. Look at it as a positive. But you know, there's so much Star Wars work coming up now, and so many projects on the go. There's hopefully future opportunities.
Yes, no doubt.
No doubt. But looking at the past briefly, Moloch, obviously in Solo, incredible character. How did that all come about? How did that come to you? Why is it you that got inside that mask?
Yeah, that was an interesting one for me doing Moloch, because I had done quite a lot of creature performing in other things, in prosthetics and fighting and doing all sorts of things like that in the stunt industry.
Yeah.
And I'd worked with the second unit director, Brad Allen, the late Brad Allen, who was doing Solo, and he asked me to come in to audition for a creature. And I didn't really have Star Wars on my radar at the time. I was working on a film in London, the first Wonder Woman film with Gal Gadot, and I think actually I'd gone back to Australia to do Loki for Thor Ragnarok, and then I came back to the UK to audition for Moloch, and I thought it might be 3 or 4 weeks work, and I would just be the stunt double, and I got asked to come in to do a costume fitting in Moloch, and they had just still been conceptualising Moloch, and they hadn't actually had a final product. So I was told it would be myself and 2 other dressers, and that would be that. And they put the head on, and there was no eye holes cut, there was no video goggles or anything for me to wear, so I couldn't see anything.
Oh, wow.
And then I felt the room was filling full of people. And the dresser said to me, like, oh, everybody's here. Like, Kathleen Kennedy's here, producers are here, directors here.
And you can't see a
thing.
Heads
of the department. Like, they want to see you walk and be Moloch. I'm like, I don't even know what species Moloch was. Nobody knew what species Moloch was. I didn't know how he walked, how he moved, or anything like that. And I told everyone in the room, so I can't actually see anything.
Yeah.
And it was a long corridor room that we were in, and there was a mirror at the end. So I just said, can someone just tell me when to stop walking so I don't crash into the mirror? And somebody said, yeah, no problem, I'll let you know when to stop. So I start moving like I would imagine Moloch to be moving, and I'm walking down, and it's very heavy and it's very awkward, and I can't see anything. And then, bang, I ran into something or somebody, and I cracked the mask open just a slither, and I could see somebody in front of me, and I was apologising, and I'd actually walked headfirst into the mirror, and nobody had told me to stop. They said they were just
I thought you were going to say Kathleen Kennedy was lying on the floor or something.
So then they said, no, it's a mirror, it's fine. So then I felt like an idiot, and I like split my lip, and there was blood in my face, and I'd broken the costume. I thought, well, that didn't go very well. And by the time I'd gotten out, most of the people had cleared out, and that was my so-called audition or fitting for it. And I thought that would not come back. And then it turns out that they had cast an actor and a performer to already play Moloch.
Yeah.
But then they saw how difficult and dangerous the suit was.
Yeah.
And in a few weeks, they came back and said, Harley, you're Moloch.
And must have thought, this guy's crazy enough to walk into a mirror and want to come back.
So that's where it all, that's how it all happened. And one thing I will say I remember was that I mentioned that Star Wars wasn't on my radar.
Yeah.
I was a great fan of Star Wars as a kid growing up, and 16, 17, 18-year-old when Episode 1, 2 and 3 were released and they had been shot in Australia, and seeing how much CGI was involved in that and green screen, it just wasn't the same. So that's sort of why it wasn't on the cards. And then when I met the creature department and Neil Scanlon and his team, and I saw the sets and I saw that they were doing live action, I was just blown away. And I was like, this is what Star Wars should be. Like, they're doing it properly. So then I got excited to be a part of it.
Did that surprise you then? Because there was always that perception that the prequel trilogy were, you know, CG heavy. It's the type of technology they were doing at the time. But now the marriage between CG, practical, is much closer than it used to be.
Yeah.
That reignited your interest.
Absolutely, yeah. It was fantastic to be a part of it. And I felt like privileged to be a part of it. And, like, particularly working closely with Neil's team and how much passion and things like that they put into the creatures. It was really good.
Yeah. Your sequences, where were they filmed at Pinewood, Fawley Power Station? Where were you?
That's right, yeah. So predominantly at the studio at Pinewood, and then we had the opening speeder chase at Fawley Power Station.
Yeah.
And then we also did the Enfys Nest team and Waydirk, this Mimbanese character that was in Fuerteventura.
Yeah.
I mean, that set was amazing. Like, they built that set out there in the desert, dropping off into the ocean. Like, it was an incredible set to be a part of.
And that must have been cool because you get Moloch. Well, I'm making assumptions here. Was Moloch before?
He was,
yes. Mimbanite, yeah. So you get Moloch and that works out great. And then this other character comes along, and all of a sudden you're doing a Star Wars shoot on location. I mean, that's different. So.
Yeah, that was very cool. And I was lucky enough to be able to bring my mother and stepfather and my one daughter at the time, my daughter out there on the location. So that was really cool to have that. And Chewbacca's walking around and Han's there. So that was pretty cool.
Thing is, it's very cool to be that character because Mimban was in like the first novel that came out after the original novel in '78. So Mimban is like a way old sort of Star Wars concept. So to see a Mimbanite character turn up was very cool.
Yeah.
And so what's the upshot of that been? Because obviously you mentioned your career's going well now. You're busy enough to sort of be able to say, I'm going to pass on that. I'm doing this. So things are obviously going good. So where did it kind of go from Solo to where you are now?
Still been doing quite a bit of creature work, which has been good. And I've been working with actors that have been playing creatures in Marvel films and things like that. So that's been fun. And I've been lucky enough to be stunt double for Robert Pattinson in the new Batman film.
Oh, nice.
So that was another career highlight where not realising being able to be part of a franchise and to be able to play an iconic character. And it's just phenomenal the amount of work that is in the UK and the quality of work and what is being produced. Like, this is the epicentre of film work in the world is in the UK.
Elsa Park will be leaving at 3:30. Anybody wishing to purchase an autograph from Elsa, please do so.
Everybody's got funny accents over here. I can't understand them.
Especially Paul Dunn. He's just weird in general. You didn't hear that, Paul. So going forward now, I mean, I'm assuming there's work on the bubble, on the horizon for you, stuff to look ahead to. So is there anything? I mean, you can't say because it's the film industry, but is there something in your mind right now you think I'm really looking forward to getting my teeth into that?
I shouldn't say. I don't want to jinx it.
Oh, don't. No.
Yeah, honestly, there's a lot. And it's been exciting for me stepping up to be coordinating in stunts and then working as a coordinator. And that's something that I've also really enjoyed that I didn't realise that I would enjoy so much, actually being part of the creative process. I mean, funnily enough, the greatest stunt film that I worked on personally for myself was The Kingsman. Which was also directed by Brad Allen, who was second unit director on Solo. Yeah. And so that was, like, for me, even though playing these characters and Batman and things like that, as a career highlight, that was, like, one of the best films for me to be a part of, to be a stunt performer and doing wild, dangerous stuff and being part of the creative process. And,
fantastic.
I'm grateful.
you sound it. That's fantastic. Thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it. And glad we've met.
Yes, pleasure. Thank
really
you very
enjoyed
much.
it. Thank you.
For everything in one location, daily news, reviews, interviews, podcasts, video and social media feeds, bookmark FanthaTracks.com for Star Wars news 24/7, 365.
Now, not that she's going to admit that the actor in question is in any way, shape or form a part of the forthcoming Ahsoka series on Disney+, which lands on the 23rd of August. But Rosario Dawson was asked whether or not Hayden Christensen is a part of Ahsoka in his role as either Anakin Skywalker, her former master, or Darth Vader. She kind of neatly dodges the question, but does go into some detail on their past history. And Rosario says, it's pretty remarkable in the sighting. We were teenagers, and then I saw him right immediately afterwards going into this universe. I could never have fathomed that I would have played any part of that, besides just being a fan of his and being really proud of him. It's been really cool that at this moment I'm joining it and he's been able to come back and also get embraced by the Star Wars family in a way that I think is much deserved. It's definitely one of those things that would be super cool if he was in Ahsoka, that is. But I'm really grateful that we're in the same universe. So in the most perfectly politicianish way, she dodges the question by answering a totally different one that's kind of on topic. But do you think, one, Hayden is going to be in Ahsoka? And two, do you think we should have some more flashbacks like we had in Obi-Wan?
I kind of feel that what we will see with Ahsoka is the conclusion, anyway, of the Clone Wars Ahsoka arc. You know, because we never really got that resolution, I don't think, at the end. And I feel like she's moved on to something. I mean, we moved on to Rebels, but I kind of feel like there was unfinished baggage that I think she still has to deal with when it comes to herself and Anakin. And I think right now that Hayden Christensen's stock is really high between him and Lucasfilm. This is, again, it's another way of extending an arm back into the prequel trilogy and kind of linking everything together. You know, and if they do it in a nice way that they did in Kenobi, I think they can't go wrong. But it does raise a question, doesn't it? We can't have Vader in these series because really technically he's dead. So you either have flashbacks between her and Vader, which again, that would be quite interesting because we don't necessarily know if like she's gone on after what we saw in Rebels and we actually, you know, she has any more interactions with Vader, so that could be quite interesting. But also, you know, it's that whole thing like you couldn't have Vader in every single episode of Rebels because therefore it kind of diminishes his effectiveness and his malice and his menace. We kind of saw that a little bit with how Thrawn was treated, and it kind of was overridden a little bit, and he was kind of like, yes, this is all going to plan, even though he's just had his ass handed to him on a plate by the crew of the Ghost. I think they'll definitely want to do some emotive stuff. I think it could be even more emotive than what we saw between Obi-Wan and Anakin, or Anakin Vader. I don't even think I need to be a better man to say that I'm pretty certain that we're going to at least get one episode with Hayden Christensen in.
I like what you say about the stock of Hayden being high, and also the fact that I think now the prequel trilogy is better regarded than it has been for a long time. So to throw back to that is interesting. There's always been that vociferous book reading crowd that enjoys novels and stories told in that time period. But also the point that you say in that Ahsoka never really concluded her Clone Wars arc before we saw her again to pick up her Rebels storyline, which is a totally different part of her life. That's definitely what Ahsoka is the sequel to. Ahsoka's the sequel to her Rebels chapter, but not her Clone Wars chapter. I mean, maybe if they do flashbacks and you do see that climactic battle from season 2 of Rebels told in some fashion in live action, the risk they've got there is that, of course, in that moment, that's when Ahsoka smashes the helmet on, I think, the right side, and you see the right side of his face. In Obi-Wan, the other side of the helmet got smashed, that Ben saw. So there's mirrors there. They could be going to the well too much too quickly because that was only last year and it's literally next month. But also, I think to have Hayden in there is going to grab the interest of people. Yeah, it would have to be a flashback. Or, and here's another flip alternative, maybe the only person that will ever and could ever see Anakin as a Force ghost to converse with, to commune with, if you like, in the same way that Qui-Gon comes back to Ben. Who's to say that Anakin doesn't come back to Ahsoka and he's her spirit guide, if you like? It's not going to be for Luke because Luke and Anakin never had a relationship. Luke's relationship with Anakin was Vader being his nemesis and the ghost of a father he never knew and wasn't really the guy he was told about anyway. Ahsoka was the Padawan to Anakin. They were close. There was a relationship. I'm just wondering whether this is where we see Anakin as a true Force ghost, pretty much as you see him at the end of Return of the Jedi. And that's the conversation, that's the connection, that's the commune between Ahsoka and Anakin. I just wonder if that could be a possibility because that's in the now, that's not in the past, that's happening right now.
That would be interesting. Because that is the thing, isn't it? Like you kind of say, we've suddenly gone from no flashbacks in Star Wars to every single, especially live action series, basically relying on flashbacks in some shape, way or form to kind of like use it as character exposition.
Yeah.
Every now and again is fine. Doing it how they did it in the Book of Boba Fett, for example, because they went back to that kind of motif repeatedly, it worked fine because it's like now part of a thematic Boba Fett story theme. But it seems harder and harder to feel, for it to not feel like it's just being shoehorned in as a way to kind of get through, to basically get a quick upshot of, fans kind of going, oh my God, it's amazing because so-and-so's back. But like you said, now Force Ghosts, that would make it more interesting because we haven't seen that. We've seen Anakin with a beaten up Vader helmet. We've seen Anakin in the Clone Wars, in flashbacks and stuff, but actually present day Anakin communing with the Force, having reconciled everything and saved Luke and thrown the Emperor down the shaft. That would be interesting, and it'd be interesting to get that perspective for Ahsoka. We guess that she's on this big quest to find Thrawn. Now, is Hayden the warning? Is he the one who's saying, like, don't give in to this kind of, for this quest to vengeance? You've got to be careful how you go about doing this, and if you put everything else to one side and you purely focus on this one quest, be careful what that's going to do to your soul. We could probably get a Yoda Force Ghost in there as well, because her and Yoda had many conversation in the Clone Wars, so that could work as well. That'd be quite fun. Ben. Exactly. So why don't they just have like a sit down, all four of them together, just sit there? That would be quite interesting, And if we kind of go up into this kind of world between world, and potentially there's going to be like a stronger Force connection there with like Force Ghosts and stuff, that could again make it slightly more believable and slightly more easy to accept. Having seen what they've done and how they've handled all these characters in the past, Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau, I think however they do it, it's going to be well done. And I think when we do see it, we're going to be like, okay, yeah, that's cool. And it fitted and it was needed, and it didn't feel like it was just shoehorned in for a little bit of extra kind of fan service.
Hi, this is Samantha Aline, the first female stormtrooper in Star Wars, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks.
One of the conversations that was had with different folks at the indie premiere was we've got a writer's strike on the go and the potential of an actor's strike as well. If all of those things kind of converge, it means that promotion for Ahsoka will be nigh on impossible. None of those people, Filoni, Favreau, Rosario Dawson, anyone, might not be able to actually actively go out and promote that series. That means that on the 23rd of August, that show could come out to relatively little fanfare. Do you think there's enough brand awareness, not of Star Wars, but brand awareness of Ahsoka Tano headlining a show of her own to get beyond the dedicated Star Wars fan base who treat Ahsoka like we used to treat Mara Jade in the 90s? This character that was like amazing and huge and important. We've never seen a live action version of her, but she's a big deal. I know we've had Ahsoka in live action for a couple of years now, but you know what I'm saying? It's this character that outside the boundaries of Star Wars fandom, not that many people are going to know. Do you think they'll be able to get over that hurdle?
Well, to be honest, mate, I think Lucasfilm and Disney can do that. And the reason why I think they can do that, not only because I think Ahsoka's a good character, it's because I think they've got so many strong connections and goodwill with the fan community, with Fantha Tracks, for example. I think they could rely so much more on the fan news sites and the fan social media channels to promote it, but they will just get it out. Obviously, it's going to be harder, as you say, because you're not going to have the grabs and the comments from Dave Filoni and what have you. But I'm not actually that too worried about it. I think now, with how Star Wars has completely seeped and permeated into the public zeitgeist and the way that it has since The Mandalorian, I think that they're going to be all right. And this is a thing also, it's very different between a film that has a limited run, shall we say, of 3 or 4 weeks in the cinema compared to a streaming series, whereby a lot of streaming series pick up a lot of extra viewers just by word of mouth. Go back to season 1 of Mandalorian, how many people who weren't Star Wars fans who were being told, oh yeah, you've got to go and watch this show because it's really cool, just through word of mouth. I think they could do it. But obviously, yeah, it's always going to be a bit of a struggle when you don't have a talent able to push it and promote it and get the message that they want the audience to kind of walk into the first episode with being delivered. Every time that we've seen a press junket with Mandalorian season 3, there's kind of been a certain kind of angle that they always take, and they did the same with Indiana Jones with Dial of Destiny. They kind of have a narrative that they want to put forward first and foremost beyond we've got a new film coming out, but just a vibe or a tone or things to kind of maybe think about before you go into a film. So then when actually you see that film, you kind of go, oh my God, now I understand what we're talking about. That's amazing. Okay, so I think that wraps up for episode 169. If you want to send us a question, you can come and find us at London Film Comic Con and ask us directly. But if you're not there and you want to send one in electronically, by all means, we'd love to hear from you. Mark, can you let them know how I can do that?
Thanks for listening to Making Tracks. If you want to be a part of the action and stay updated on all the latest Star Wars news, visit fanthatracks.com or check out the free Fantha Tracks app through the App Store to follow us on your mobile device. Wow, you really put your heart into that one. You can reach out to us and send in your listeners' questions by emailing radio@fanthatracks.com. Like Mark said, send us an email, send us a snail mail, grab us at London Film and Comic Con. We will answer your questions. Comment, like and share on any of our social media feeds at Fantha Tracks, and be sure to subscribe, leave a review, preferably a 5-star one, on Amazon Music, Audible, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcatcher or smart speaker of choice. And as always, thanks to James Temple for composing the Fantha Tracks intro, Adam O'Brien for our Making Tracks opening music, and Mark Daniel and Vanessa Marshall for our voiceovers. Remember to tune in to Good Morning Tatooine. It's live Sunday evenings at 9 o'clock UK, 4 PM Eastern and 1 PM Pacific on Facebook, YouTube and Twitch. And check out our Fantha Tracks Radio Friday night rotation. It's every Friday night at 7 o'clock UK time for new episodes of The Fantha from Down Under, Planet Leia, Desert Planet Discs, Start Your Engines, Collecting Tracks, Cannon Fodder and special episodes of Making Tracks. And every Tuesday at 7 o'clock UK time for your weekly episode of Making Tracks. And that's me done for this episode.
And if you are going to come and grab us at London Film Comic Con, make sure that you wash your hands before you do so. But until then, if we don't see you next weekend, make sure you go out and see Indiana Jones Dial of Destiny. And of course, stay safe, take care, and may the Force be with you.
Coming up next on Fantha Tracks Radio, it's Planet Leia.